Oh my goodness. I am so delighted. I just had to say that because it's already been such a delightful morning. And I feel really, really blessed about that. So, well, my name is Reverend Marcia MacLean, and I am here to talk to you this morning about unity in multiplicity, celebrating the miracle of light in every heart. And I want to start out with a little bit of an icebreaker because I don't know about you, but I have a feeling I'm not alone in this. This time of year seems to be more packed, except for possibly April, springtime, Easter, Passover. This one seems to be so packed with all of these different holidays and celebrations and traditions and cultures that go along with them. And I'm not always sure what to do about that. Before I had something to believe in, my go-to would be avoidance. I know that seems like an oxymoron right there. My plan would be to avoid. Another one which failed was to try to go along to get along. You know, let me see if I can just kind of fake it through this so nobody realizes that I don't believe the same thing that they do. Or maybe this strategy, which is to just in some way be untrue to ourselves until it's over. And we're like, oh, thank goodness, I like Thanksgiving, I'm good with New Year's, I just try to ignore the middle. Except there are opportunities in taking a deeper look. I also wanted to share with you what many of you already know. I was raised by parents who left organized religion in the late 50s, suburban Boston, moved to southern Vermont to craft an ideal life for themselves. They became Unitarian Universalists. They did everything as eccentrically as they possibly could. And then I was born, okay? And I attended a Unitarian Universalist congregation every single week for my entire upbringing, where we got together like this, and we talked about interesting things, and we ate good food, and we had study groups, and we had bazaars, and we had a great music program. We had all those trappings, except for the dogma, except for the part that said, this is what you ought to believe. As a matter of fact, it was the polar opposite of that. I joke that I was baptized as a Unitarian Universalist, and I want to tell Garrison Keeler that I still don't know exactly where I'm going to end up when I go. So he says that Unitarians go to the great beyond, I can't remember, something undefined. So there was all of that structure of the experience of community, which was so wonderful. The sights, the sounds, the smells. And then twice a year, we'd get all biblical on Christmas and Easter. And I was like, what's going on? I don't like this. So I was raised to be a free thinker. And I'm guessing you're here because you are one too. So along come these holidays, and the question is, should I go along to get along? Should I just hold my breath between Thanksgiving and New Year's? What should I hide out? Should I leave town? What should I do? So that's what I used to do. I would avoid it. I would be in judgment. I'd say, I just don't like this stuff. Then, like many people, I got into a little bit of trouble. Not trouble, because I didn't get caught, but I was a troubled kid. And I did too much of a lot of things. I put myself and others in a lot of danger, and it got out of control, and I needed to get some help about that. And the people that I got this help from said, you need to have a relationship with a power greater than yourself. I'm like, oh, I don't know. You don't understand. I'm a free thinker. I don't do dogma. I don't do religion. Don't tell me what to think. Or I might have to shoot. Well, not that. I was a pacifist. So I went on a search for something to believe in that allowed me to still be a free thinker. Guess where I ended up? at the First Church of Religious Science in Fort Lauderdale back in 1985. And I just turned 24. I showed up for Easter, of course. So still, we have this thing about the holidays, which I'd rather work through them. I'm actually going to work through them. I'd rather be busy. Maybe some of you, too, had a magical experience of some of these holidays as a child, and then your parents got divorced, and it wasn't fun anymore, and you wanted to avoid it for that reason. Okay? That happened for me, too. But here's what else happened. I went shopping for something to have a relationship with. I didn't know the word at the time, but I was looking for a cosmology. A map that said, Marcia, you are here. You live in this universe, and these are some things that will guide you on your way. And no, they're not outside of you. So I found that. I found that in my recovery path, and I found that in Science of Mind, now Centers for Spiritual Living, all these 37 years later, right? So here's what else happened. When I was God shopping, I stopped over at another New Thought metaphysical church, which we're familiar with, called Unity, which still had very obvious references to its Christian roots. And for this kid who grew up in the backwoods, playing around in the forest by a stream and hopping through apple orchards and whatnot, it just didn't work for me. There was too much emphasis on that. So I kept going, and that's how I ended up here. What I did discover, though, is that the people who hang out there, the ones who explore these teachings that I've been avoiding, like my parents did, from a metaphysical perspective, I had no idea. This, for me, was the back door into Christianity through New Thought, through metaphysics. Oh my goodness. Instead of throwing the baby out with the bathwater, I found out that there was a hidden meaning in every story. There was something for me in it, and that when I cracked open those books and tried to understand what they were saying, when I did it with the guidance of metaphysical teachers, I found something that I resonated with. It was only through that I was willing to engage in ideas that were considered Christian in origin. And not just that. Ancient wisdom, New Thought, science. I dug the science. References to nature. Those things worked for me. So see, I got to continue to be a free thinker, and I got to get some gifts from these ancient teachings by learning about metaphysics. Okay? So we're going to do two things today. One is to look at unity and multiplicity with a little help from Ernest Holmes, our founder. And we're also going to look at a metaphysical interpretation of the Hanukkah story with a lot of help from my friend, Reverend Mark Anthony Lord, and Charles Fillmore, who is the founder of Unity. Because I'm still a Unitarian kid. I just became a metaphysician, so I'm a Unitarian metaphysician. If I were to tell you, oh yeah, I do this all the time, I would be going against the very story I'm going to tell you in a few minutes. I would be pretending to be somebody I'm not. So, here's what Ernest Holmes has to say about unity. Well, he has a lot to say, but here's one paragraph about unity and multiplicity. There is one, not two. Never forget that. Anywhere in the universe, just one. That one life is the substance of everything. It is one in unity, but multiple in manifestation. It is one substance from which an infinite variety of different things come. But every one of those things is made out of the one thing. If you're new here, you might be like, wait a minute. I hear references to God, Spirit, Creator, the I Am principle, which don't have any gender attached to them. That's a little weird. They're not saying he and him and thee and thou. We say law rather than Lord. We're just weird like that. Isn't it great? Okay. We say that there is one life, one power, and yet that it shows up differently and uniquely and beautifully as each and every one of us. Understanding that we are one and yet not all the same, that's some powerful stuff. If that's all you did was to really get our unity and simultaneously to really get our multiplicity, I know that your life and all of your relationships and all of your experiences would most definitely change for the better. Just those two things, those spiritual principles, unity and multiplicity. Think about it. We would embrace equity, unity, equity, right? We would embrace diversity, inclusion, without, not just because, some mandate says we should try harder on that one. Something within us knows that we are already that. Of course we want to be that. So I'm going to take you into a metaphysical interpretation of the Hanukkah story. And metaphysical means that we examine something beyond physical appearances. You could say that this is a spiritual practice. You could say that it's a philosophical one. You might simply say it's a psychological exploration. That beyond, above, behind, and even beneath what appears, there's some message there, some code, something valuable that is a gift for you. So, listen to this as I share a little bit about it, and I'm going to confess two things. I promise you that. Like I said, I don't do this every day. But I found that this is the best way for me to get through Christmas and Easter and a few other things. And as a result of metaphysics and new thought, I have become the biggest champion of interfaith everything, intercultural everything. It's fun to play in the field of learning about each other and embracing one another. Well, what do you like to do this time of year? What do you like to eat? What do you sing? It's fun. Of course it is. We're designed to be curious and to enjoy each other's company and to play in this field together. And I have to give credit to Mark Anthony Lord on this one and Charles Fillmore, okay? So, many of you know this story quite well. Hanukkah is the festival of lights, celebrating the Maccabees' victory over Syrian Greeks in the 2nd century BCE. The Jewish temple had been seized by Syrian Greeks, and of course it was dedicated to the worship of the Greek god Zeus. It was a great upset to the Jewish people, and yet they were afraid to fight back, and you'll find out that's partially because they were outnumbered. In 167 BCE, however, the Syrian Greek emperor Antiochus made Judaism punishable by death. And people were ordered to worship Greek gods, and they were forcibly gathered to bow down to false gods, false idols, and to eat the flesh of a pig. Let's think of the thing that will really tick them off the most and make them do that. Unfortunately, this is still happening all around the world. So we have something to learn from this story still, so that we stop repeating it, right? So, there was a Greek officer who ordered Mattathias, a high priest, to do these things, and he said, "No way, I'm not going to do them." And a war began. And I'm going to ask Rick to hand me my water, because I feel that nice hot air coming my way. Okay. Hang on one second, it gets good. Okay. So, Mattathias refused, a war began, and eventually the Jews retook their land. And they went back, right, to reclaim their temple in Jerusalem, and guess what? It had been defiled. Of course. What did they do? They dedicated it to the worship of Greek gods and to sacrificing swine. That ought to do it. So, of course, what happened was there was a decision to purify the temple once again by burning the menorah in the temple for 8 days. And yet they only had 1 day's worth of holy oil left. And of course, as the story goes, they lit it anyway, and miraculously it burned for 8 days. This is what is celebrated at Hanukkah, which begins at sundown today, by the way, every year. So that's the story. Now, here's the metaphysical part. Here's where you look for yourself in the story. Just like you do if you're into interpreting your dreams or having a psychoanalyst help you with that sort of thing, it's a very valuable tool. So Greek soldiers represent, right? This is all symbolism from an ancient story. Conformity by force, consciousness of control, do it my way or else, forcing people to fit in, play by the rules, coercion. It never works, right? We may have a controller within us that says, don't rock the boat, fit in or else. I don't feel comfortable being myself because I might get in trouble, I might get caught, it might not go well, so I'm just going to play small, I'm going to hold back. If we had a controlling God of some sort in our youth, or perhaps we just had parents who were like that, we may also tend to hold back every time that we experience some kind of fear. Instead of busting through it, instead of challenging it, we'll pull back and try to conform. So this is the soldier mentality. Worshipping Zeus represents where we are forcing ourselves to believe things out of fear. A fearful interpretation of God can do this. Are there remnants of that in you? Are you staying in line and under control to avoid punishment? Beyond Zeus, when our concept of God becomes so expansive and inclusive and unconditionally loving and embracing, we don't conform, we transcend. Another thing I do not do very often is refer to the Bible. And here we go. Romans 12:12 says, do not conform any longer to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. We know something about that. So Mattathias, the high priest, he refused to bow to foreign gods and eat the flesh of a pig. He refused to believe in something less than the truth. He refused to let ideas that were not clean and pure into his consciousness. Remember, we practice not interpreting things literally, but we're looking for hidden meaning. We're looking for hidden meaning. And you practice it and you get better and better and better at it. And you can do this with your whole life. So he had the gift of what is referred to as Jehovah consciousness. But you can also say it is the consciousness of the true self, the great I am. We know something about that, right? So being like that is to perceive possibilities through the true self, regardless of what anyone else is trying to have you do. The great I am. Here's another one. And before I go on to that, it says here too that it is in consciousness, of course, where transformation begins. In thought. We know that here too, right? See, that's what happens when we look at something from a metaphysical perspective. We find at the unity. We find what's universal in it. And we have the experience of more harmony and less division because we found something that we can all relate to, even though we do it in different ways. So the holy oil represents the thought of love. Poured over anything makes everything perfect and whole. Isn't that cool? A holy thought extends forever, just like the holy oil. One holy thought, one higher thought about yourself even, still reaches out into infinity and blesses the whole world. Wow. So you start to relate to the holy oil as love, as something within you, as a potential power, a spiritual principle to make use of. So being like the holy oil, we can choose love in any situation and make it holy and whole, because love harmonizes everything. So you could say when the chips are down, oh yeah, I'm going to use love, because I remember that the power of one loving thought about myself or anyone else transcends all that other stuff and instantly makes it right again. Here's some more. The number 7 represents what can be achieved in the physical world, in the natural world. The highest level of perfection that you can achieve in the natural world is represented by the number 7. 8, however, turn that on its side, that's infinity. 8 represents what is possible when you have faith and courage and belief and tap into the I am principle, the universal consciousness that you truly are, the all that is, and you can achieve more. You can achieve the seemingly impossible. Whether it's one day's worth of oil burning for 8, whether it's being outnumbered and still winning, whatever it is. That's what we do in our classes, in our spiritual practices here. We learn to operate at the level of mind. We learn to demonstrate beyond the natural. We do fire walks. That's way beyond the natural. We cure, we heal, we transcend illness and difficulty by calling on that number 8. Courage, faith, that principle that is a notch above what you can achieve in the natural world. So there's that. And finally, the Maccabees, who were greatly outnumbered, their resolve to battle the Greeks was not logical. In the world of form, it didn't make any sense. They were bound to lose. However, they drew on those reservoirs of faith and courage, number 8, and it was not part of the normal human nature would be like, we're outnumbered, let me find a cave, I'm just going to hide till this is over, right? And instead, that merited a miracle higher than nature, and it lasted for 8 days. So what does this mean to us? I want to suggest something that we can take home with us, because we are still traveling into this holiday season where we're invited to agree with and believe in and go along with so much. And we also have extraordinary opportunities. We've got one coming up on Wednesday to learn more, to lean into the multiplicity. What's different and unique and beautiful and interesting about each and every one of us. It's fun. So, this is how I want to end it with you. So we are one, yet we are many. It doesn't work to try to change people to be like us. We don't want to be this year's or this month's or this week's or this day's version of a Greek soldier. We don't want to do that. We also don't want to pretend to be somebody that we're not. Hang on just a second. We don't want to pretend to be someone we're not just to get along, because that doesn't work out either. What happens? We kind of build up this tension. We've got to let this energy of who we are go somewhere. So then we start acting like idiots, or we get depressed. It just doesn't work out. So we can't avoid ourselves either. It does work to call upon our own higher consciousness to transcend and change what is before us. It does work to celebrate unity in spirit and multiplicity in form. You can do that. It does work to celebrate the miracle of light in every heart. It does work to pour light on every person and every situation and watch the magic happen. Watch the miracle happen. Ernest Holmes writes this: "The wick of your individual life runs deep into the oil of pure being. There is but one life, and that life is your life now." So, Similar to the words that Tim used as he ended his treatment, I want to invite you to say these with me, okay? That was from this thing called you. Say it with me. The wick of my individual life runs deep into the oil of pure being. There is but one life, and that life is my life now. And so it is. So go forth, live it, and encourage others to do the same. And be on the lookout for your miracles. Thank you.